Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project, where our vision is to inspire all leaders to challenge the status quo. We like to explore lots of different topics that leaders need to understand for them to be successful in their businesses and in their careers. And today, we're greatly honored to be joined by Robert Jake Jacobs. Jake is the founder of Jake Jacobs Consulting. He's a keynote speaker and he's the author of multiple publications, including Real-Time Strategic Change, You Don't Have to Do It Alone, The Change Handbook, and his most recent book, Leverage Change, which covers 8 ways to achieve faster, easier, and better results from any change effort. He's also an opinion columnist with CEO World. It's a great pleasure to have you on the show, Jake. Please say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit more about your background.
Sure, Mick. It's a delight to be here. And I think that one of the best ways I can tell your audience a little bit about me is to tell you, how did I get into this work? And I was 21 years old. The sun was shining in through some blinds, and there was a woman sitting behind a desk. Her desk was piled up with folders and papers, and I was doing research. These were mental health facilities doing substance abuse treatment. And so I was there doing research for the university that I went to. And I would go in and spend an afternoon doing interviews in each of these locations. And then I would go back to my hotel room, which in those days was a pretty big deal to be going to hotel rooms while I was still in college and traveling across the country. And I would have a day to write up a case study. And I would go back to my room and dutifully write up my case study and get on a plane and go to the next facility. Well, this afternoon that I'm telling you about was different. It was in Buffalo, New York, and there was a woman sitting across the table from me who was the executive director of this facility. And I was taking notes, and I said to her, well, tell me a little bit about your clients that you see, these substance abuse treatment clients. And she said, I don't have to tell you anything. And there was sort of a resignation in her voice. And I said, I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean? And she said, look out through those blinds. And I looked out through the blinds in her office, and there were a group of young men standing on the corner and chatting. And it didn't look unusual to me. And I said, okay, I see some men on a corner. And she said, yeah, that's where they go to shoot up before they come in for their sessions. And I sat back and I stopped taking notes, and I looked at this woman, and I was on a path, Mick, to get a PhD in business and do more of this kind of research and case studies. And I actually remember sitting on her couch and deciding at that moment that I wasn't going to be doing research and I wasn't going to be getting a PhD. And that what I was going to be doing was going to work with organizations so that people didn't have stories like this to tell anymore, that they were successful in what they were doing, that this woman's resignation in her voice, that fewer of those were going to be heard, because I could go into organizations and help them, not just the substance abuse treatment places, but all workplaces, to be able to make it when in the morning is a place where you can do your best and you can reach your full potential and you can be excited about working there. And so I always go back to this time in Buffalo, sitting in that woman's office and realizing that I could make a difference. And the best difference that I could make would be doing consulting work. And that was when I was 21 years old, and it's what I've done since then.
That's an amazing story, Jake. Tell us more about how that felt when you saw 2 things. When you saw the people on the street, but also that feeling of exasperation in the executive director's demeanor.
Mick, I think I had two feelings, which they're really hard to have at the same time. I think because um, I don't know that I had them before or since. Um, and they were the same feelings. Now you're asking me about both seeing that group of gentlemen and this woman, and one of them was sort of sheer dejection, um, feeling powerless in the face of what she was trying to deal with and what I was trying to deal with, and how inconsequential this report was for the work that I was doing. It was just going to be writing up a very sad story, and I wasn't doing anything about it other than really documenting this woman's pain and the futility of the work that she was doing in her own eyes. And so I just felt this overwhelming sense of powerlessness. And I think at the same time, because I was headed to get a PhD in business, that was the path I was on. I had a great academic mentor. And at that moment, there was, sort of a lightning bolt that went through me of clarity. And I said, no, no, that's not what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to sit here and spend a career doing interviews with people who are despondent because their organizations aren't effective. And so I had an internship with a consulting firm. And so I had a really easy path into doing this work that was waiting for me. And I just sat there and I thought, well, this could be different. I could help make this different. And whether for that woman or for the next one, or for the woman that was at a plant that I worked at that stood up in a large group session, they were going to be laying people off from this plant. And a woman stood up in the crowd and she said, I just want you all to know that I'm willing to give my job up right now so that my son has a place to work in the future. Now, you hear stories like that and you say, we can make a difference, that there are so many good people and organizations waiting to be able to make their best contribution. So I've always followed a path of helping people reach their full potential. And that's really what gets me up in the morning. I mean, the book called Leverage Change, 8 Ways to Achieve Faster, Easier, Better Results. And at the end of the day, what the book is really about is helping people achieve their full potential. And the best way for them to achieve their full potential is to have effective change. And my argument is the best way to have that effective change is what I've captured in the book. And, those lessons go all the way back to, this nameless woman in the office in Buffalo at the end of the day with that light streaming through. It all takes me right back there as if we were sitting there today.
I can see that in everything you're saying, that you're reliving it all the time. And what I'm hearing is that you are strongly driven to create a positive impact on the world, and your chosen vehicle to do so is to help people find their path towards creating their own positive impact.
Absolutely. And I won't even say any more, Mick, because that captures it perfectly.
Now, you have expertise in organizational change, and let's go back to the lady in our story, the executive director, and that feeling of being despondent and frustrated, exasperated, whatever adjective we'd like to show. That doesn't sound like an isolated case to me. I come across this in my career all the time. You end up with these collective groups of people that all go into their roles, their businesses, with the right meaning, with the right purpose, with the drive to want to make a positive change, but often end up in a system or a process where they get frustrated that they can't affect that positive impact that they're looking to do. Tell us more about that.
Well, I think, Mick, I think there are way too many of those stories. And I think, I mean, if I'm honest, I think those stories get told in all organizations, including the ones in which I consult. And I can do my very best in whatever parts of the organization that I'm working that people have an excitement. One of the levers, each of these levers in the book deals with a particular problem that people experience when they're trying to create change. And then there's a lever to address it. So one of the things that you hear in every organization I've ever worked in, when it comes time to change, people say, "What's in it for me?" Right? In my organizations that I've worked in, they actually love acronyms, and so they call it WIFM. What's in it for me? And a lot of leaders and thought leaders in the world of change look at that as a selfish interest. They're like, those people are only care about themselves. And if they only cared about the organization or their teammates or their business unit, this would all be different. And so what they do is they go on a journey of trying to convince these people the benefits of the change for them. This is called a case for change. We have names for these things. And in this situation, I believe, as is true with most of these levers, that there are issues with the paradigm that people have and their practice based on that paradigm. So what do I mean? Well, in this case, if it's a healthy, reasonable thing to ask what's in it for me, if that actually is okay, and then we need to have a good answer for it. Instead of trying to answer that individually, the lever that I came up with is called develop a future people want to call their own. And see, what's different about this is it's a collective response. We're not trying to convince one person. What we're doing is we're inviting people into a process to create a future that they want to call their own. So one is that we're doing this together and we're not doing it alone. Another one is that we are creating something that people want to be part of. And when you want to be part of something, you don't worry about what's in it for you anymore. You know what's in it for you. It's an exciting, compelling future where your organization is successful, your customers are satisfied, your suppliers are thrilled. I mean, you love to go to work in the morning. All of these things are part of a future that you want to call your own. So these levers, I call them uncommon wisdom, because the common wisdom is try and convince those people. The uncommon wisdom is you don't need to convince those people if there's an exciting future waiting for them. I've never had to try and talk somebody into something terrific. They know it, and if they have a hand in crafting it, they can be confident that it will be terrific and exciting and stimulating. And that whole notion of achieving your full potential, everybody in the organization has an opportunity to do that when they're creating a future they want to call their own.
There's so many nuggets of gold there, Jake, that I'd like to pick on. So you started off very early in our conversation talking about bringing the best out in people. Then you brought us to WIFM, what's in it for me, but now you're bringing us to ownership and engagement and buy-in, that if people see a new transformed version of themselves in the future, one that they're happy, one where they're proud of what they're achieving, then they will take ownership of the change themselves. So you're not implementing change to them, you're encouraging change in them.
Yeah, and I think, Mick, the other thing is that we got to find ways to support people in doing this work. And if you think that it's up to you as a leader to try and make change happen, one of the things I do is these short videos on LinkedIn. So people can look for Robert Jake Jacobs and find these videos. And one of the videos that I did recently is about my parents. right? Now, I have a 91-year-old dad and 86-year-old mom, and we've taken the keys away from them, right? This happens. It's a level of freedom that disappears with all of us with age. And so I'm their driver. And what that means is I take them where they need to go, wherever they need to go, whenever they need to go, that I can make it happen. And so I start this video out talking about being a driver of change in your organization and how important that is and how important you can feel to be the driver. It's somebody that stands up and makes a difference. It's somebody that pushes things through, that, you know, has this energy in the morning, that they get into work and they make things happen. And what I do in the video is I talk about a different kind of driving. I talk about the kind of driving I do with my parents. Because you see, when I drive my parents, it's their agenda. I'm never driving where I want to go. I'm always driving where they want to go. So when we think of drivers of change in organizations, the common wisdom is, you know, take names and whatever, kick whatever backside you have. It's that tough person who's going to force these things to happen, whether the system's ready for them or not. I'm a driver. Well, there's a different kind of driver, which is how do you help people on their agenda get where they want to go? It's easy to drive things when it's my agenda and I care. But with my parents, I go where they tell me. And if I'm a leader that really listens to his or her people, the kind of driving of change I do can be quite different. And I think quite profound, and I think quite lasting, because what you're doing is you're building the capacity of the people in your organization to create change on their own. It becomes like servant leadership. I'm supporting my people and getting where they want to go. And if in fact I've done a good job educating them and creating an organization that really is a learning organization that understands the marketplace, that understands the competition, they're going to go good places. I mean, I can let go of control. I've always told clients, if their people are smart enough, alignment happens on its own. I don't need to worry about somebody running off the agenda or off the page or working their own issues. If everybody, you know, reasonable people exposed to reasonably the same information come to reasonably the same conclusions. So getting people smart is another one of these levers. Create a common database, and it deals with the problem that people don't know enough to make good decisions on their own. And I think that's because we haven't educated them. I don't think that people are thick-headed. I think that there are people at the top of the organization that need to learn from people on the front lines just as much as people on the front lines need to learn from people at the top.
I'd like to bounce off that a little bit, Jake, and maybe build on it. I'd love your opinion on what I'm about to say if I build that story together. The bit I want to add is about vision and purpose and values and beliefs. So as the leaders of the organization, if you're really clear about your vision and your purpose and your values and beliefs, you will then naturally attract and retain people to you that share that common purpose and the common values and beliefs. Then in turn, then your job is, I'm not going to say done, it's your job is partially done. And now what I'm hearing from you, Jake, is then energizing those people and inspiring them to go on this journey because they want to go on this journey, and then empowering and then enabling them and then letting them go, and that they will find their own alignment and their own cause because everyone's got that same vision, purpose, values, and beliefs in mind. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I want to put one twist into what you said.
Yeah, please.
The twist is that as leaders in an organization, what those values and beliefs are is I need to take a stand and advocate for what I believe, you know, to the bottom of my bones. I need to be clear about what I believe. And at the same time, and this is based on something called polarity thinking that a buddy of mine, Barry Johnson, taught me 30 years ago. At the same time that I take a firm stand on advocacy for what I believe, I need to have the same amount of inquiry into what my people think. And I can only do that to the extent to which I advocate for what I believe. So there are times when you listen to your people, but what you need to do, I think, is listen to them so carefully and so purposefully. In fact, as much as you want them to listen to you. And out of that conversation, out of that dialogue, I think is where the diamond is in the center of that oyster. I think that's the magic in organizations, is when you can get those kind of honest debates and the healthy debates that are there. They're there anyway. So the only question is, are we going to have them or not? And if I salute too quickly to what a leader is saying, then, shame on me and shame on the leader, because we all lose. So I've designed these interactive experiences where we have leaders bring their best thinking to the group. And I'm talking, 2, 3, 4, 500 people in table groups of 8. Now, the pandemic's gotten in the way of that, but we'll get on top of that. And there are ways to do it virtually, but they bring their best thinking. They educate that group, everything that they knew that led them to this conclusion. And then they say, at the end of a second day of a 3-day event, what do you think? And then we get each of these table groups coming up with their best recommendations for what to do to the mission, vision, values, the goals, whatever the work is they need to do. And then we have those posted around the room and people vote. So it's like I say to them, like, don't just go to your own sheet that you just came up with and vote. I know you're smart, you're wise, you're enlightened. That's cheating. So start with somebody else's sheet. But then as you go around, start marking the things that you really believe in. And then we have often the leaders and a cross section of people from the group itself work on that turnaround. And they turn it around overnight. So this is not like, we're going to get back to you, take it under advisement. Let's study this. We'll get a tiger team to get, no, this is that night. And I've worked with teams that have worked till midnight doing this with a level of integrity, because they want to make sure they really do listen to what people are saying. And when they come back in the morning and they say, how does this look? The standing ovations that I've seen, because people really have been seen and their words have been used and their intention has been followed. All of those things make for a whole different kind of experience and a radically different relationship between leaders and people in their organizations. And people don't forget that. It's like, and it changes people. What we say with leaders that we work with is this kind of approach both creates and demands alignment. So I don't have to worry about what you're doing, Mick, after you come out of one of those sessions. I can give you the freedom to be creative and innovative and to reach your full potential in the work that you're doing. And I don't have to micromanage you, because you understand what those goals are. You understand them at a very deep level because you've wrestled with what is a good answer to this. And you haven't just taken it from somebody else and had a cascade where it rolls out. I had a client once who said, when they roll things out in our company, they really roll us over. And they just flatten us with whatever that answer is supposed to be. And then we're supposed to salute. And meanwhile, we have to pick ourselves up off the ground and we've been flattened by this cascading process. It's not like that at all. It's much more of an ongoing conversation, because once I get into that conversation with my leaders, I can never not have that kind of conversation again. It's like, once I know that's possible and the expectation is there, game over. We're now playing a different game, and it's one in which everybody's got to be on the playing field for it to work.
I love this process that you're describing, Jake, and I'm getting a really clear visual in my head, and I'm wondering whether the audience at home is getting the same thing. Got this big beaming smile on my face and picture of what you're describing, and it somehow is a crescendo of many of the things that we talk about on this show, which is why my smile is beaming and my heart is beating right now. People want to feel valued. They want to feel that their voice is heard. They want to feel that they matter. And you're giving them that voice. You're talking also about deep listening. So talking about having that conversation about vision, purpose, values, and beliefs. And yeah, stating some things up front, but then zipping it and listening and deeply listening with an open mind about new ideas, listening with an open heart to hear about the emotion of the way people feel about the business and the direction of the business, and listening with an open will, which means to imagine new possibilities, not just the ones that you've thought of yourself.
Right.
And then by having that engagement, it's almost impossible for people not to align to that because it's theirs.
Right. And Mick, one of the things that I know and I have seen in this process is that the listening is like you said, it's different. So that in the book, I actually talk about 4 magic words. And the magic words that I found in my career, both for me to ask as a consultant, because that listening counts for me too. If I come in with an answer and I try and force it on the organization, I'm no better than the leaders that I may be trying to help. Right. One of the levers is called design it yourself so that the organization has the opportunity to create their own change effort. So the 4 magic words are, could you say more? And the reason that those are magic, I believe, is because they act as an invitation to people to contribute. You're coming forward and you're saying, could you say more? And more is always different. So it could be in a one-on-one conversation with my manager, and the manager saying, could I say more? Well, it could be about a specific project, an idea, and something that I'm working on. If we say, could you say more? And you're in a large group meeting and your CEO is up front asking that question, what they're saying to somebody at a table group is, no, wait, before I answer this question, I don't want to make an assumption that I know what you're talking about. I want to understand what it is so that you're my customer right now. I want to satisfy your need and curiosity. So could you say more gets used in that act and in that situation too. And if all of us could learn a little bit more, I mean, I have a fiance, she wishes, I'm sure, that I would say, could you say more often? And that at the end of the day, better understanding each other is both the person speaking and being clear, and the person who's listening, inviting even more than that first round, even more than that level of surface of, here's my answer. And it's like, no, wait, I want to understand more deeply where that answer comes from. It's the kind of conversation that you and I are having right now. We could be satisfied with the first answer, but you're not, and I'm willing, but you're asking me in want of better words, could you say more? And those are the same ones that I write up in the book. And I say, good Lord, if more of us use that in our vocabulary on a daily basis, how much better our organizations would operate.
Well, thank you for picking up on that. That's exactly what I do on my podcast. Sometimes I even use those exact words, but certainly that's what I'm looking to expand always on the first concept, because there's always something more there. And for those that haven't tried it at home, this technique, tell me more, could you say more, the expansion of the mind that happens, the things that come after those conversations are usually the most enriching ones in terms of clarity, understanding, but a really key one, significance. If you go through these conversations and you're drawing it out, and if someone starts repeating the same maybe word or phrase a few times, you've found something there. You found something that's really important to them. And come back to what's in it for me. You might you might have discovered something that if you just took the
Absolutely.
answer, you might not have found. Yeah.
Absolutely. And some patience goes a long way. I mean, um, just one other of these levers, Mick, that I'll mention is around when change is too slow. And a lot of people have this issue, right? Because they need to make a change for new technologies, new customers, new markets. So speed is something that matters a lot. And rather than trying harder, right? I played basketball in high school, and I was what they call vertically challenged, Mick, which means you can't jump in simple terms. And the coach used to come during the rebounding drills and he would yell at me, jump higher, jump higher. And I used to like, I mean, it was like a Far Side cartoon. It was like, what do you think yelling at me is going to all of a sudden enable me to get higher off this floor? But in terms of the book and moving faster, it's like, you know, trying or yelling or trying even to encourage people to move faster. There's a simple paradigm shift that I've discovered around one of these levers that, you know, has cut the time of change efforts in half or more. And it's called think and act as if the future were now. So what this says is that common wisdom is that the future is something out there, that it's going to arrive at a later point in time, and we wait for it to unfold. That's the definition of the future. But leverage change says, no, we're going to take a different approach to this. We're going to say, get a picture of the future, reach out, grab hold of that image, and bring it back into the present. And start thinking and acting as if that future you preferred were present right now. So as I start to say, well, we've got a participative organization, it's like you don't wait till next week or next month to try and get more participation. What you do is you look at your calendar in the afternoon and you see whose voices are going to be heard in the work that you're doing. And if you're supposed to be a participative culture, then you got to find some more voices to get in the room while you're doing your work. And not, like I said, next week or next month, but here and now. And the more that you start to behave as if that future were today, the sooner you start to experience the future, and the fuzzier the line between the present and future. And when I can't answer if I'm in the present or future anymore, that's actually good news, because that means that things are happening that wouldn't have happened for months or even years sometimes. But if you make that decision to live the future now, those changes happen very rapidly. And when you look around the organization, everybody starts behaving differently. So the person on the left and right of me is thinking and acting as if the future were now. It's very difficult to say nothing's changing when I look around at an organization where people are practicing that principle.
I love that, Jake. And you're picking up on one of my favorite things, which is visualization. So imagine 12 months from now, what have we achieved together? What do we look like? How are we different to how we are today? And then what can you start acting on immediately, that as if that future is now? And I did read that chapter in your book, and that one resonated with me strongly, as of which it all did, by the way. We've spoken a lot so far about how to make it work. So we've spoken a lot about engagement, ownership, getting people to design their own future and to be heavily involved in the change to make it work. But let's talk about some of the challenges for a while, because people, your own words, people find change hard. They find it slow. They find it disappointing. One of the ones I'd like to start with is change weariness. How can you give some advice to our audience about organizations, and I think there's many out there that are like this, where they've had so many change initiatives, one after the other, that some have yielded results, some have not. And then another initiative comes along and everyone's just, here we go again. How do you address that one?
Well, I think, Mick, the first thing we need to do is acknowledge the exhaustion. That we need to let people know that this is actually normal and to be expected. I mean, we as humans are not designed to deal with an inordinate amount of change, so much so that we can't turn left or right before we face yet another change. So as these changes are piling up in an organization, and they do, whether it's a reorg or a new process or a new tool or whatever it is that's being introduced with the best of intentions, right? Nobody's doing this to harm somebody, but with the best of intentions, it ends up not only exhausting people, but it starts to chip away at their confidence. Am I able to do the job that I need to do surrounded by all this change? And, people talk about the day job and change work, and they talk about those like they're two separate things. Well, one common wisdom approach to dealing with too much change is do less change. Right? I mean, if that's the problem, if we just pulled back the reins on the number of changes we were making, then it would be easier for people and they wouldn't be exhausted. They wouldn't lose confidence. And that's a great solution, except for one problem, which is if your organization needs to make those changes, then not making them is becoming an ineffective, unsuccessful organization. So giving up and saying, well, we'll just change less is not a good answer. So what's a better answer? Well, if you take a paradoxical approach to change, which is something that, sounds absurd at the surface, but when studied more deeply makes sense, what the lever that I've used to deal with this change fatigue is pay attention to continuity. So what I do is I talk with organizations not just about what to change, but what not to change. And this is a very uncommon conversation in organizations. Nobody is talking about what to keep the same. You don't end up on the cover of Fast Company by saying we're going to stay the same with an exclamation point next to it. It's not celebrated. People don't pay attention to it. And even leaders who stand up and know that most of what they're going to do in their organization is staying the same, if they don't say that out loud, people don't hear it. And what they hear is this constant drumbeat of change. And that's where you get anxiety and you get worse performance. So in organizations in which I work, we always include what I think is the other side of the coin or the other part of reality, which is what's going to stay the same. And as you have those conversations about what's going to stay the same, some of these things we've done them very well and we want to continue doing. Now, there are some things in the past that we need to let go of that we have done well. Well, that's okay. Take an honest stock of things and make a strategic decision. But there are a lot of things that we've done well, we're going to continue doing. And if we focus on those, people get more confident. They sit up a little straighter in their chairs. They speak with a little bit more energy. And I believe, and I've seen in organizations, they have the kind of energy to deal with more change because they're bolstered by that continuity. I say people to have firm ground to stand on when they have that continuity to take a leap into the unknown world of change. And if I have that firm footing, I've got a lot more confidence, a lot more belief that we're going to be successful in this. And that helps with anxiety. It helps people increase the believability index, I call it, of the work that they're doing around change. And the higher that believability index, the higher my confidence, the better my performance. All things ratchet up with a higher score when I pay attention to continuity.